transform the economy. But oil refineries contribute to global greenhouse emissions, and developing new infrastructure to refine a fossil fuel seems to run counter to the general message on reducing carbon emissions and scaling back on fossil fuels. So should African countries be developing their oil refining sectors? Shoaib Boutamin is an oil and gas strategy advisor and CEO of Randeril Consulting, and he's based in Algeria. Before taking on that issue, he gave us an overview of oil and gas production across the continent.
If we compare the oil and gas production in Africa, if we compare it to what's really in Asia and the Middle East and the United States, North America, it's only so much. We don't produce so much oil and gas in Africa. But anyway, fossil energies, oil and gas have been for a long time, for long decades, we were relying on fossils to boost the agriculture and industry and all sectors. So Africa now at the moment, we have seen some countries are really investing in oil and gas, including Algeria. Algeria, by the way, is increasing its oil production. Natural gas production also is increasing. But some countries, they have some troubles, including Nigeria. Natural gas production in Nigeria is dropping dramatically because lack of investment. Another countries also in Africa, like Egypt, is not producing. There is a decline of natural gas production in Egypt.
So why is production dropping in some countries? In Nigeria, you said it was a lack of investment, but what's happening in Egypt? And then in other countries like Algeria, as you're saying, production is going up. And then we've got the new countries coming on stream like Uganda, also Mozambique, Tanzania. But tell us why production is dropping and why, for example, in Egypt.
If we talk about Egypt, there is a Zohar field in Egypt. There is decline, mature field. So they need more investment, I believe, and they need to find the new resources and new fields. You know, the oil and gas industry is a very heavy industry. It needs more investment, need to entice more investments, more money. Central banks in most of countries, they are suffering. As we know, we have inflation levels are very high in European Union and United States. So to attract the investors at the moment, it's not really easy, I believe. Most of financial banks are in the US and Europe. So that's why I believe it's a little bit tight for African countries at the moment.
So it's a lack of investment. So Uganda then, that should be good news, no? Because Uganda has attracted investment from the UAE to the tune of $4 billion.
Uganda, I believe, is poised more than any time to tap into its natural resources, including oil and gas. And by the way, it's building a long oil pipeline stretching to Tanzania. So the country is willing to commercialize its oil through the pipe of more than 1,500 kilometers with Tanzania. So there are massive investments are running in cooperation with some IOCs like Total Energies, CNOOC from China. So the goal is to process more than 60,000 barrels of oil per day. I think this is a priority for Ugandan government, is to get more money, to have a more comfortable financial cushion. Uganda has a very good energy mix. It's getting more than 84% of its electricity from hydropower. So this is a very good positive point talking about Uganda.
So the EU is criticizing Uganda for the work that's being done on this Uganda-Tanzania oil pipeline, and they cite concern for the environment. I'm just wondering what you think about that. Are EU countries entitled to dictate or advise what a country like Uganda can and cannot do when it comes to development?
I have to be very honest with you. How can we criticize the African countries, but on the other hand, the EU, the European Union, is still relying on fossils. So European Union is consuming more than 40 billion cubic meters of natural gas per year. The European Union is still consuming more than 16 million barrels of oil per day. They still investing a lot of fossil energies. So there is some contradiction. I believe there are double standards. When we talk about Africans, we can give them advices. We tell them this is not good, but this is a big problem. Climate change is not a problem only of Africans. It's a global problem. We have to work together 80% of energy at the moment, global energy consumption, 80% is coming from fossil energies.
Just to remind our listeners, what are we talking about when we say fossil fuel energies?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fossil, we talk about oil, but we talk about coal, and we talk about natural gas.
These are resources that we have in plentiful supply around the world, but they are very damaging, right, to the environment. So are there other ways of harnessing fossil fuels and limiting emissions that are damaging the environment?
If we want to make energy transition, we have to make an energy transition inside between fossil energies. We have to make natural gas as priority. The second one will be oil, the third one will be coal. Why natural gas the first priority? Because natural gas is emitting 60% less of carbon compared to coal. But the priority also is to apply technologies available at the moment. We can use EOR, enhanced oil recovery. We can use them to extract natural gas, for example, but at the end of the day, we can get it with less CO2 emissions.
So it is possible. Why, though, is it not being used to the extent that it should be? Is it expensive?
No, there are a lot of companies at the moment, they are relying on technology. I give you some examples. For example, in US and in Europe, they are using these technologies. But the Africans at the moment, they need to get more technology from this country. So if you don't have, they are poor countries. So how can they get technology? So we need to have more cooperation with developed countries to entice investment and to get more technology. So at the end of the day, we can reduce the CO2 emissions by using these technologies.
So let's talk about green finance. Are African countries actually getting the finance they need, as was discussed at various COP meetings, for a green transition or not? Because I know that before the last COP, there were conversations about when is the money coming? Why is the money not coming? Is the money forthcoming now?
It's a little bit tight to get investment, to get money from other countries. The central banks at the moment are increasing the interest rate in many banks. So Europe still have high inflation, in the United States, also in Asia. The exports from China are shrinking so much in the last few months. So how can they transfer the money to the African countries? So now the Africans, they have to create their own investment bank. They have to get more, develop their resources, and they create the wealth, how to valorize the natural resources available in Africa. And by the way, they can entice more investment and they can develop their green plans in the future.
Shuaib Butamin, an oil and gas strategy advisor in Algeria.